Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another live episode of The Breakdown. We're enjoying the role on the two shows a week. If for no other reason than it makes it so much easier to not do 3 hour shows because that's a lot of breakdown in one sitting. So we did our earlier show in the week on Wednesday, and we are now doing our Sunday night show. We're also excited to be back streaming live on the YouTubes, and we're hoping to up our streaming game on Wednesday again. Hopefully, we'll be streaming to a few other platforms as well as the YouTubes and the Twitter Spaces. We're going to do a little bit of rundown of the week in Alberta politics, and then we're going to have Deirdre Mitchell-McLean and Sarah Biggs join us so that they can maybe help us make sense of the incredibly big news that came with the dissolution, the firing of the AHS board by newly elected Premier Danielle Smith earlier in the week. But we're going to get right into things right out of the gates. One of the things that a lot of people have been wondering is, well, how bad was the economic impact of the border blockades that we saw not too long ago, where anti-health measures, anti-vaccination folks decided to illegally block borders between Canada and the United States. And one of the questions that a lot of people have had in regards to that is, what was the approximate cost of that? Well, with the hearings that are going on, which, by the way, little point of personal pride for everybody here at the show. We got a DM earlier in the week pointing out that there were a couple of breakdown tweets that have made it into the commission hearings because of course they did. But one of the things that came out of the hearing was the approximate cost, and the approximate cost of the freedom blockades, $3.9 billion. That's billion with a B. $3.9 billion. That's how much those border temper tantrums cost the not only Alberta economy, but the Canadian economy. So it wasn't just a harmless, no big deal thing. The reality is it did cost the Canadian economy $3.9 billion in trade, which is not at all a small number, especially given that these same folks are the folks who are trying to get the economy going again. And for everybody who's on the Twitter Spaces tonight, you better believe that there were some air quotes going on there. But getting into the events of the week, we got to start with the it's kind of two stories in one. So one of the things that happened this week is the Alberta Chiefs, all of the treaty chiefs in Alberta. So we're not just talking about like one or two. We're talking about all of them. There's three. And all of them got together. They held a press conference and they said, hey, this Sovereignty Act thing that you're thinking about doing, it's kind of bullshit. Our treaty is with the Crown. Our treaties predate the formation of the cute little province that you've got going on there. So, this is not only something that we have no interest in, but quite frankly, it's offensive. I'm obviously paraphrasing like a fiend, but we are going to get to some video in a bit, because one of the other pieces that kind of overlapped with that has to do with where the APTN ran a story where they did a deep dive. The journalists did a deep dive on Smith's claim that she's part Cherokee. Now, this isn't a new claim that Smith has made. She's said it a couple of times in the past, that she's heard from people in her family that she has this proud Cherokee history. But it caught some more recent attention, let's say. So the more recent, a little thing happened on the internet a little while ago, and on September 28th, Smith tweeted about that thing. We're just going to go ahead and read Smith's tweet here. So this is a verbatim reading of Danielle Smith's tweet. We're not claiming that it represents anything other than Danielle Smith's tweet. But on September 28th at 8:13 in the morning, she said, I've been made aware of an appalling clip involving a phone bank contractor that we engaged to assist our campaign that I feel is offensive. and entirely unacceptable. I will not be associated with such behavior and have instructed /1 my campaign to immediately terminate any contract or other dealings with the involved company. And this is where the problematic part for Smith comes in. As someone with Indigenous ancestry, I honor the heritage of Canada's Indigenous peoples as one of our nation's and province's greatest treasures and strengths. Again, if we could stop doing the R, that would be great. That wasn't in there, that was me. Continuing on /2, we must stand in solidarity with our Indigenous peoples to dispel any and all stereotypes that undermine their invaluable contributions to our country. To be clear, the former Justice Minister in the clip has never had any role in my campaign. /3, there was no /4. It was just a 3-tweet thread. And this got some attention because it appeared to a lot of people that Smith was using her alleged Cherokee heritage as a shield from controversy. But the APTN's investigation seems to quite clearly demonstrate that she doesn't have the ancestry that she claims. And it turned into a bit of a news story this week because as many real journalists were able to identify, CTV Edmonton, for example, was able to, their headline was Smith fails to back up Indigenous heritage after reports find no proof. Danielle Smith's defense was that she hadn't done a deep dive into her family history. She hadn't really looked into whether or not she was actually had any Indigenous heritage. That was the excuse. Which brings us back to the press conference about the Sovereignty Act, because it was asked of the chiefs, hey, what'd you think of that? We're going to play that clip for you right now. All right, moving on from there. Apparently, there's no sound playing in that clip. Thought we had all the technical difficulties ironed out, but of course we did not. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit here, and I'm gonna do a little bit of we'll do an audio only version of the clip because it really is quite important. I think that people hear it.
Bill or the government. Hello, I'm Sean Amato with CTV News here in Edmonton. Thanks for having us today. I wanted to ask a related question about our Premier. For years, Danielle Smith has claimed that she has Indigenous heritage. There's more. And even recently, she's claimed that she is a person of mixed ancestry. APTN recently did an investigation and found that that's probably not true. Today we asked the Premier for a statement on that. She would neither confirm nor deny whether she has Indigenous heritage. She said that she hasn't done a deep dive, and it sounds like she doesn't really know, but she has made these claims in the past. So I'm wondering what the reaction to that is in this room, and if that is in some ways offensive to the people in this room that somebody would make that claim and either it's not true or she doesn't know. Thank you.
I think if I can, I think they should go to the Pink Palace here, the Canada office. They're the ones that have that category of which bloodline you are, and maybe if she can find herself there, maybe that will believe.
Anybody else, please?
So a lot of times, you know, being a person of this land was was really tough on the people from this land. And we've defended that, we've protected that, and we've always maintained, we were people of the land all the time. And then after some time, as we start to grow, as we start to fight in court, we learn about the institution of law, of governance, of, all the institutions are starting to become these masters. What we're realizing is that anybody wants to be a part of that Indigenous community if there's a benefit. At the university level, we have people who are not Indigenous who claim that they are Indigenous to gain benefits, to gain bursaries, and so on. There's always something behind it. And to only just show up right now to say that they're Indigenous, and if to recognize that a true Indigenous person would not go against all the treaty people of this land.
So pretty clear there how the response was. I mean, in impressive fashion, there were a couple of chiefs that laughed it off with a little bit of a joke, a little bit of humor, and props to them for being able to approach it with that. But as the last gentleman that you heard speaking was quite clear, there is a very real problem with people choosing to claim Indigenous heritage when it's convenient for them. And that's not okay. I did a whole big rant on this on our Wednesday show. I'm not gonna rehash it. I'm just gonna simply say anybody who is not, I'll say, white presenting, and Deirdre and I had a back and forth on this on Wednesday as well. Anybody who's not white presenting, if you're gonna claim that you are part of the Indigenous experience or First Nations experience, you'd better have the receipts to back it up. And there's lots of different forms that those receipts come in. I'm not the person who's even going to get close to trying to say what those receipts should look like. But if the best that you have is, I heard some stories around the dinner table, and you're the leader of the province, that's just not good enough. Now, one of the other pieces that came out of the press conference was all three of the treaty chiefs, the nation's chiefs, so Treaty 6, 7, and 8, they had some pretty strong words, like I said earlier, about the Sovereignty Act. They said that it's offensive. They reject it outright. And this is a quote: Smith's proposed bill undermines the authority and duty of the sovereign nations that entered into treaty. And how can the province make a sovereignty bill when our treaties were made before the creation of Alberta? So again, this is another example, it seems, where Danielle Smith has come up with these super exciting policy ideas, but she hasn't bothered to put the thought or the consultation into it, and they end up causing real harm. Because this also definitely speaks to Smith's ability to create the economic corridors that she's talking about with Indigenous peoples, because one of her big campaign claims is that she's going to just somehow circumvent the federal government and create economic corridors by partnering with, and I'm not going to say it the way that she does, with Indigenous and First Nations people from here to Port of Churchill. Now, that whole thing is a whole other deep dive we're not going to do tonight. It's a train wreck. It's never going to happen. But certainly when Smith is starting off the conversation as premier with Indigenous and First Nations peoples and Métis peoples by saying, hey, I'm just going to disrespect you in the worst way possible, doesn't do a whole lot for speaking to the quality of how those conversations are going. And the Sovereignty Act just keeps causing more problems. But it's interesting because one of the other things that came up with the Sovereignty Act, before we move on to our next thing, is that it is now being softened considerably and is reportedly now titled the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, which is a pretty far cry from the juggernaut that she said that she was going to introduce into Canadian politics. And more, it's looking like Smith's ferocious Sovereignty Act is really nothing but a paper tiger. But moving on from there, one of the big conversations that happened this week has to do with trains. Danielle Smith sent a letter to City of Calgary, Mayor Jody Gondek, saying, hey, you know what you guys need? You guys need a train from, you need to get your Green Line going up to the airport, and you need a train from Calgary to Banff. That would be great, wouldn't it? And And it's not the first time that Smith has weighed into the municipal realm. She came in and said that, hey, you guys should have an arena. And we did a little bit of a thing on that where there's some pretty substantial connections to Smith and some of the people who would directly benefit from the arena. If the next segment feels a little bit familiar, there's probably a reason for that. Because this isn't the first time that the idea of a train has been floated. There's an organization that was created called Lyricon Capital, and they've been pushing the idea of a train from the airport all the way to Banff for a while now. So that forces the question, who's Lyricon Capital? Well, Lyricon was formed by business titan Adam Waterous and his wife Jan. I shouldn't have come off the Indigenous section quite that hot. But it came off of that with his wife Jan, in order to push the idea of a train from an airport to Calgary to Banff. Now, it gets a little bit complicated because there are some oddities that are involved in this. The Waterouses have a lot of interest in Banff and the area. They own the Banff train station, and they own the Norquay ski resort. So a train from Calgary to Banff that would allow people to get there, and one of the prices that they've thrown out is $20 per person, that would allow people to get from Calgary to Banff or the Calgary airport to Banff very quickly, obviously would definitely help out their business interests. But there are a few oddities. You can see on the screen here if you're watching on YouTube. As noted by a digital rendering of a penguin on November 15th, Lyricon initiated lobbying efforts using a company called the Alberta Council starting on November 7th to lobby the government and Premier's office on the train pitch. Now, from what we can see, it was actually November 1st, but whatever. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, hey, breakdown. Haven't you guys talked about the Alberta Council before? That sounds kind of familiar. And yeah, there's a reason for that. We pointed out a few weeks ago, Danielle Smith's campaign manager was, for her by-election campaign in Brooks Medicine Hat, is actually a lobbyist with the Alberta Council. She's employed by the Alberta Council. See, the Alberta Council is a private company. It sounds very official, but they're a private company that, among other things, do lobbying efforts. They represent organizations to try to get the government to do what they want. And while that campaign manager, Alexandra Carlisle, wasn't listed on the Lyricon file, she was listed as directly lobbying the Premier's office on 40 files while she was acting as Smith's campaign manager. On November 8th, Smith won that by-election, and it looks like a week, if we go with the November 1st date, before Smith won that by-election, the company that her campaign manager works for was hired to lobby Smith, and 7 days after her win, Smith wrote a letter to the mayor of Calgary, saying that Calgary should look at building a sea train to the airport and a train to Banff. Now, this comes after Lyricon had downplayed the need for taxpayer money when they pitched the project to Kenny, and it was rejected last summer. And it was rejected, in the words of Transportation at the time, Transportation Minister Prasad Panda, it's passing on all the risk to the Alberta taxpayers. The business proposal that Lyricon put forward was passing on, in that interpretation, all of the risk to Alberta taxpayers. So one reading of the situation could potentially be that this businessman and his wife, who own Norquay and the train station, wanted to get the province to assume a bunch of risk in order to build a train to bring people to maybe their ski hill. And former Premier Kenny weighed in himself as well. He said, so far we have not seen an economic case. We're not prepared to write an unlimited check. So not only did Prasad Panda, the Minister of Transportation, say, you know what, I just don't see the business case here, but the Premier of Alberta at the time, Jason Kenney, said the same thing. And it kind of makes a person think, maybe. After Smith's giant cabinet shuffle, what ministries are two of the biggest voices in objection to this this super infrastructure project? What are they in charge of? Right, they aren't. Kenny was predictably and understandably left out of cabinet. He was the ex-premier. He had said some very strong things about Danielle Smith. But as more than a few members of Alberta's Hindu community have noted, Panda, who was about as uncontroversial a member of Kenny's cabinet since day one, was shut out, as was Leela Ahir, which meant the cabinet went from having 2 Hindu members at its peak to 0 today. Now, there's obviously a lot going on here, and there's sure to be a lot of moving pieces that people aren't aware of. But there's one piece that we kind of stumbled on that we thought was maybe a little bit relevant, because again, the provincial government took a look at this really roughly a year ago, and they said there's no business case for it. It doesn't make any sense. You guys are going to cost taxpayers money. Why would people say, hey, you know what? You should totally do this. Well, back in 2015, Danielle Smith was leader of the Wild Rose and was aiming to form government before the Lake of Fire comments by Alan Huntsberger, where he said that you can live the way you were born, and if you die the way that you were born, you will suffer the rest of eternity in a lake of fire, hell, a place of eternal suffering. Wild Rose was pretty, no pun intended, fiery in 2015. But despite all of that, and before we get to the next bit, it's worth noting that Smith refused to condemn the comments initially when they broke. The Wild Rose lost and the NDP formed government. But despite all of that, Adam Waterous donated $10,000 to Danielle Smith's Wild Rose UCP. Huh. That's probably just a big coincidence. Moving on from there, we're going to bring in Deirdre Mitchell-McLean, and hopefully Sarah Biggs is going to be joining us in a few minutes, because one of the biggest stories of the week has to be the dissolution, the firing of the AHS board, and that's not one that I want to try to take on myself, so we're going to try to have a little bit of a panel discussion, and as always, we're going to invite everybody who's listening in on the Twitter Spaces. If you have some thoughts that you want to share, if you think that we got something wrong, you want to correct us, we'd love nothing more. But Deirdre, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Nate. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm eternally frustrated with why the audio on the videos. I did the whole show as a rehearsal earlier, and it worked. And I was like, it's going to be great. And then as soon as I hit the Let's Go Live button, all of a sudden the videos were like, or maybe we won't. So I think I'm going to be looking at a new video platform fairly soon this week.
Yeah.
But how are you doing? Before we get into the AHS stuff, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's still been a week, right? Like, we're definitely not getting away from doing 2 shows a week. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
No. I mean, well, I ran down 3 stories and we're already 23 minutes in. So if we were going to do all of the stuff that we talked about on Wednesday, we would be here till 2 o'clock.
As well, right?
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Yes. But otherwise, good week?
Otherwise, a good week. Yep. It was busy. I threw my back out doing nothing.
Well,
isn't that awesome?
Hey, I turned 46 a week ago, and so I'm super excited for all of those random why does that hurt moments.
Right. Yes. I had so I did that, and funny enough, apparently a lot of movement, not lifting, but a lot of movement is helping tons. So I'm glad that I was risky enough to try that.
Worst thing, anecdotal and not at all related to the subject matter tonight. One of the worst things that you can do if you have a sore back, a strained back, is just lay still. It's brutal.
I know,
worse.
but when it hurts to walk, it's tough, right? And that's where I was the first day, and I was just like, I don't know, I don't understand what to do with this.
Fair enough.
But yeah.
Looks like we've got Sarah Biggs joining us now as well. Sarah, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, send medication, please.
You sound
We're so sick.
you sound a little congested there, Sarah.
That's with meds. Um, it's been a week in the Biggs household. Let's put it that way. I was not feeling well Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday, Maddie spiked a fever, and Thursday she was fine. Friday, Kara called me. They were like, "She's having a 40 degrees fever." I was like, "Oh,
It's a little high.
go get her." The 10 years old was home all week. We received an outbreak letter Thursday night. My husband, who I salute, who said that he refused to participate in the illness, is officially sick. So, but it's not COVID.
Well, that's good. I mean, Lord knows there's no shortage of other things, as we talked about on Wednesday's show. There's no other shortage of things that are running around wreaking all kinds of havoc, especially with the
It's
little ones.
RSV nightmare. Like Maddie had RSV, but it was not the first. So she got RSV in August 2021. She was really sick, but she, it's not her first time around. So, thankfully, it was not as bad. But it's the fever, it's the grumpiness, it's the my muffin broke in two, and I'm gonna scream for 3 hours kind of sadness we had to deal with. So I don't know
There's
what's easier, like dealing with that government or dealing with my 2 years old having a temper tantrum because her muffin broke in two.
that is a tragedy, though, a broken muffin.
It's yeah.
Okay,
Let's
moving
put it
back
that
to
way.
moving back to the AHS board. It came out that, and we had I'm going to call it a very strange press conference where the AHS board was dissolved. The new person in charge was named Dr. John Cowell. And there's some fascinating history there that I'm hoping that we're going to get into. But out of the gates, I'm going to go to Deirdre first. Deirdre, Smith did it. She fired the board. She said she was gonna, and then she did. But it's maybe only temporary, although this now means that she gets to appoint an entire new board, so that'll be fun. What do you make of the decision to terminate the whole board at the peak of a respiratory infection season that is already crippling children's hospitals across the province?
So there's this there's a way to say what I'm going to say, and I think I've actually put it out there before, that that I think what Danielle Smith does is she does her best to misunderstand the given situation. And I mean, this is not an uncommon thing I found, is that some people prefer to create a problem that they can fix rather than actually fix a problem that exists. And that's what she's done. The problem was the board. Therefore, she got rid of the board. That wasn't the problem. The problem is that we're in a pandemic. The problem is that people apparently refuse to take the bare minimum of precautions to stop this massive spread that we have going on. And the thing is that it isn't just, as Sarah pointed out, it's not necessarily just COVID, but we have gotten too used to, and this is, I mean, who didn't notice this after the pandemic? How many people would, go around out there hacking and stuff, and you're just like, ew, right? Because all of a sudden that became something that we actually recognized as being, not okay, right? I don't want you coughing in my airspace right here. But if you think back to prior to the pandemic, right? How often did people come into work with, oh, it's just a cold, and spread it around the office? It happened all the time. Why do kids get sick? Well, because there's sick kids being sent to school. Oh, it's just a cold. Okay. But again, like what the doctors that I'm seeing who are still talking about this are saying is that getting sick all the time is not actually beneficial to you, like to a human body. It just isn't. So I don't know. Like I said, create a problem, fix that problem. Don't fix the problem that exists.
Sarah Biggs, what did you make of the implementation of the promised um, end of the AHS board temporarily, at
Well,
least?
I have a lot of questions, that's for sure. But I'm wondering if she's even going to be able to fix the problem that she has created. To what Deirdre said, like she's really good at ignoring the facts. Like, let's be honest here. She's totally ignoring. She does not understand what is going on in the schools and daycares right now. Um, and it totally shows in within like AHS communication when the kids are on outbreaks. It's a repeat of 2013. Same guy. They did the same thing. Did it get better? No. And I'm gonna raise a question. Sorry if I sound congested.
We'll just call it a jazz voice.
Yeah, it's my jazz. I smoked 15 packs of cigarettes this weekend. Um, why, what are they going to do with Covenant Health? Why is Covenant being left alone? It's one thing to point AHS because technically it is the biggest, healthcare body in the province, but we are doubling. There's a side system is existing right now with Covenant Health, funded with public dollars. They have a board. They have hospitals. They have one in Banff, multiple in Edmonton. Even have one Castor, I believe. Um, please, I would love to see the rationale behind, well, we're just gonna fire the board, so it's just gonna be easier. Um, she found two people that were willing to say yes, Premier, and they're gonna move along with her plan. But do I believe that it's gonna fix? Absolutely not. It's just gonna make things worse, right? I honestly do not understand
Okay,
the rationale behind it. There's no rationale.
fair enough. So I'm going to stick with you for a sec, Sarah, because this was one of the things that really struck me about the presser. Um, I'm not sure what happened there because they did allow media to ask some questions, and there were some very very good, very substantive questions that were asked, and then absolutely not answered. Which is, pretty on par for a government press conference. But some of the places that the conversation went, particularly with Dr. Cowell, um, here's what I'm trying to understand. As you pointed out, he did the same thing in 2013. He assumed the same role. Was going to fix everything. We are where we are, and he's no stranger to being in front of media, but somehow on the day of the announcement of the firing of the AHS board, which again it's worth noting is a governance board, they aren't an operational board. For anybody who's not familiar with the difference, there's two different types of boards. There's the ones that says, hey, we should head in that direction, but they don't say how to get in that direction. They leave that to the people who actually know how to go in that direction.
Do things.
Yeah, do the things. And then there's an operational board that says, we're going to go in that direction. I'm going to tell you exactly how we're going to get there, how many steps it's going to take to get there, and what kind of shoes we're going to wear. The AHS board was absolutely a governance board. It wasn't an operational board, which is why it was so bizarre that Smith was always saying, it's the AHS board's fault, because that's not how any of that works. But how did we, on the day that the AHS board was fired, get into the land of golf scores?
Have you seen any shackles under the table at the presser?
I did not see any. The camera view that I had did not show under the table whether or not there were shackles. Was I missing
seriously,
something?
like, are we ever going to learn from our own past mistakes? Like, again, there's no rationale. She had beef with AHS because there were restrictions. Miss Smith had a restaurant. She was not happy about the restrictions. She made it very clear. And it just smells like a personal vendetta, Nate. It's not for freedom. The hospitals are full. Our healthcare workers are exhausted. And then we're giving, like, health bucks to go get 10 visits a year, apparently, because apparently a doctor visit only costs $37.50. Like, when, you know, uh,
I think we've hit the
I'm,
exacerbated Sarah point of the show.
I'm seriously wondering when is it going to be too late? Because what is it going to take for her to do something? What is extremely painful right now is that she's blaming everything on the board, who is, like you said, not an operational board, refusing to acknowledge that there are issues right now in schools, in the healthcare system, and they are ignoring the very basic science. Like, wear a mask. If you're sick, stay home. Like, there's not even that kind of messaging, With Kenny, there was a lot of problems with the messaging during COVID, but this is just like you're ignoring the problem until it's gonna slap them in the face and or break their nose. They refuse to acknowledge that we are not out of a pandemic yet. Our kids are getting super sick, but that's okay. That it's AHS board's fault. Like, she found her Grinch into the AHS, and it's like AHS board is the boogeyman, and oh boy, is it ever going to hurt when she realizes that that was not the issue.
Okay.
Because let's remember that she was treating her COVID with tonic water.
Well, and she
Red
had
River.
the pictures that she posted of her allegedly, some people say, ivermectin that she got in maybe Mexico, but we don't know
Do you
that.
know how much ivermectin was going for in the black market last winter? Like
I'd have no idea.
thousands, thousands. That's
I have no words for
it's
that.
yeah. I have no words anymore.
Deirdre,
Like, yeah.
I wanna throw it to you for a sec. One of the things that we've acknowledged with the current healthcare situation is that it's not, COVID's still a thing, but it's not the dominant thing anymore. We're seeing more and more RSV. We're now hitting the massive flu season stuffs. Do you think that there's a well, I can ask this in two parts. So, one, do you think that there's merit in changing the conversation from, hey, it's the pandemic, to, hey, it's our health system is on life support and the generator's running out of gas? Do we need to change the conversation, do you think, or?
Um, like probably, and that's a conversation that Smith would absolutely love to have,
How come she
right?
hasn't?
Well, because it's not broken enough, I guess. Um, like, but the way that she wants to go, of course, is moving into private insurance and things like that. That's been something that she has uh, I championed for quite a while, um, from the time on the radio show that she had. So, like, this is something that she has long had an affinity for, and it's accept or not accept, but um, like, it's a very difficult conversation to have in Canada. Almost everyone will admit that, like every part of the spectrum, because people like their healthcare, right? We like our healthcare system. We like our universal payer. Um, we are universal access and single payer, that is government funded. We like that. We appreciate that, and it has kept certain conversations from happening, because and anytime you see it come up, like, there's just almost immediate outrage, right? Because people don't want it to change. However, most people can admit there are issues with our healthcare system. We maybe don't, have nearly enough services, providers, things like that, to deal with real issues like a pandemic. But hey, we weren't the only ones. I mean, the US has a free for all, and they didn't have enough either. So like it was just something that affected everyone the same way. It was overwhelming. Um, but this is a conversation that she absolutely has been having for quite a while, and so the goal is, I think, in a lot of conservative circles, to move to, more of an insurance provider system. Um, I believe that Smith did say at one point that, for those who can afford to pay for private insurance, they should be paying for it, and the only people that should be covered under a government system is people who actually don't have financial access.
Well,
So
this was one of the interesting things about the press conference I found, because we had Dr. Cowell tell his little story about how he got home from the hospital, and I mean it's arguably outside of the healthcare system, because he was able to get himself in effect, what I gather from the description that he gave, the equivalent of an Uber that had been retrofitted so that it could put a bed on wheels, or a gurney inside, so that he could go home and convalesce from his broken leg. But it's, I mean, in that story, he talked about the fact that it was I was fortunate enough that I had a private company that I could go to, and I used my credit card to pay for it, and that's something that we need to do more of. We need to bring these people into the system. And then he said that they claimed that when people can't pay, they do it for free. Nate raises a skeptical eyebrow, is all I'm going to say to that, because I have a skeptical eyebrow. But it seems like there is that we need to utilize more private companies through the public tax, the public funded system. It's and one of the counter arguments has always been that if you do that, then there's going to be people who leave the public system to go work for the private companies, who give them a better deal and better access, and and then the public system will suffer. We heard from FUCP 2 shows ago, where she talked about the fact that she was mandated when she was in the UK to have specific hours to work in the public health system and specific hours to work in the other one. But it's the fact it struck me, the fact that this gentleman was comfortable telling that story and saying, we need to get more private companies involved in healthcare. That seemed to definitely signal the direction that things may potentially be going, especially because you didn't see Smith or Copping going, whoa, man, don't say that on camera.
Yeah, no, it's like this is something that I think certain conservative circles, apparently the ones we keep electing, this is a goal. Like, this is absolutely a goal to spread some of that money around, because look at the US, right? Hospitals and they make money for people who invest in them. And this is usually the issue when we start talking about privatizing or outsourcing type of thing, is that as soon as you add in the profit equation, then someone is suffering, and it's either the workers or it's the services. I think, I feel like, did we have this conversation?
But Deirdre, I'm worried about abortion care. I'm worried about transgender healthcare. I'm worried about women's healthcare in general. She keeps complaining that they're not getting enough money from the federals. She's not going to be able to bang that drum if she moves forward towards some sort of privatization. So what are we going to have left? Like, we will be putting minorities at risk here.
Well, and I think it's
disturbing.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I don't think that it's something that that's going to happen too quickly. I mean, all of that does come from the feds. So the government has to change there first. But you know, it's as far as the health transfers go, it was originally supposed to be a 50-50 deal, right? So the feds were going to pay half and the provinces would pay half, and we actually aren't there. So that is, it's a legitimate complaint. But again, you know, you look at every other province that pays a healthcare premium. We used to in Alberta as well. Now we don't. So again, it's just, you know, that was based on an ability to pay as well. If you were lower income, then you had basically your amount was subsidized. But every other province has some sort of a healthcare premium charge.
But even every other province has a provincial sales tax. We refuse to bring up the levels. Like, we want a Cadillac, but we have a LADA budget, or we're only like, we want a $50,000 car, but we're only willing to spend 2,500 on it.
Yeah.
Because we feel so entitled and we refuse to pitch in more. It's either she increases taxes or she's going to have to do something. This is going to fail. And no, the Fed's transfer is not 50-50. But
No,
if
it's not.
if she's moving a lot of stuff towards privatization, they're going to be reducing their accord even less than what we're getting now. It's just going to be monumental shit show. And I'm not, like, if we look at, you know, national vaccine procurement programs and the shortages that we're seeing right now on the shelves, and all that, this could directly be impacted if we choose to take that path. And it's, you know, I think it could be happening quicker than what we think it would.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. This is something that they're going to try. But remember, too, that the Public Health Act right now, we can have private options. Like Quebec has them, right? You have private options available there.
Yeah, but it's we can't compare both. We can't. We just can't compare them right now. It's like Quebec pays more taxes. Quebec has private healthcare, yes, but it is not funded by the government. Just for an example, my mother got her hip replacement done 3 years ago. She paid $35,000 for it. She fully paid the cost, but they have private healthcare, but it's not at the same time. Everything is put through the public healthcare, and if you want to go faster, well, then you open your wallet and then you go. But we can't compare the privatization that is happening in Quebec and with the privatization that Smith is envisioning for the province. She's absolutely 100% trying to bring in an American-style healthcare here.
Oh, yeah.
And
she's
that is
absolutely
not
looking
going
at
to
American.
fly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of politicians and a lot of people in general who are completely enamored with the American system of, you know, pay-as-you-go health. And that's not something that they can do here, but they can bring in some more private options. And yes, you know, that's something that we probably should look at, is how does it work in Quebec? Because we do have it in Canada already. There's a system that has been in place for quite a while, and that's really where I think that any advocates for this really need to start just looking at the Canadian version and saying, how does this work and how did it impact, you know, public health there?
Here's what I'm trying to understand, because one of the disconnects for me is you know, one of the arguments is always if we expand private healthcare, then, you know, people can pay and they can get their services faster and rent. One of the other arguments that you hear, one of the concerns that you hear a lot of people saying, is it's just a way to take private dollars and move them to take public dollars and move them to private people for profit. And I think that's, you know, Smith today tweeted out her bizarre little thing where she said that she was committed to public health care. Health spending accounts are a bonus. for Albertans to pay for services not covered by AHS. Rachel Ontley knows this, but she doesn't care about the truth. She'd rather spin than give real feedback on how to improve our current system. And I couldn't help but think to myself, but it's not AHS that covers these things. It's Alberta Health, and it's kind of scary that the Premier doesn't know the difference. But it seems like one of the ways that she's trying to use these spending accounts that she's even said recently that she's not going to be pursuing until probably the spring. She said that it's going to be used for a variety of services, many of which aren't evidence based. So it's I'm not sure that it's I have a really hard time getting to a place with Smith where it's evidence based. She's doing this because of ideological economic reasons. It seems very purely reactionary, and she wants to be able to get her I don't know, fancy crystals at a discount or something. But before we get too far into that, we've got Lynn who's raised her hand. Lynn, what's going on tonight?
Well, you guys are having a great conversation above my pay grade, but I just want to bring it down to the grassroots. You guys may know that my husband has grade 4 glioblastoma, but I want to go back to my grandfather. So that was before Tommy Douglas, and he had a major health incident. He was in the university hospital for, I believe, like 6 months. They came to the farm. Sorry, I'm getting emotional, and I'm as sick as Sarah.
Sorry to hear that.
My mom was 13, my uncle was 11, and my grandmother. All the rest of the siblings were gone and married. They took everything except 1 cow, 2 chickens, and a small tractor. Everything, because there was no health care. Those 2 teenagers and that grandmother sustained their lives, but my uncle had a mortgage for over 25 years to try and gain back, buy some more land, and feed his kids. That's what privatized healthcare or no healthcare does. Now we go back to today, where in 2015, my husband was diagnosed. As per Daniel Smith, he could have fixed it himself. We got the first indication of something was wrong on a Thursday, and Friday afternoon, the Fort McMurray Hospital told us what was wrong in 24 hours. He had surgery 7 days later. He's had over 30 MRIs. He was supposed to be dead in at the most 16 months. Now she needs to tell me what his life was worth, because if what she's proposing is going to happen, he would have been dead. He follows a group that's based out of the US. And I'm telling you, he was an active member of society. He still is. He had a very high job at Syncrude. And he cries when he sees what happens there, because these people are dying just because they can't afford the test. And that's what is breaking him. I mean, he's a UCP supporter 100%. But in the last time since she became premier, that's changed. He does not want his kids to live through what my mother and her brother had to live through. So she needs to answer some people, because $375 would have got him out of the first emergency room. I just, because I'm older than a lot of you guys, this is affecting me, because healthcare is the number one thing. And when you're sick like me and Sarah right now, it affects us even more. And I'm so sad right now that I don't even know what to do. Sorry, guys.
No, thank you, Lynn. First of all, it's always a privilege for us to have you speak, because you come from such a heartfelt place. I think that you kind of hit on something really important there, though, because Smith, it seems like in Alberta, there's historically been all of these like third rails of politics that you don't mess with. You don't mess with people's pensions. You don't mess with the healthcare piece. And you really don't mess with people's families. Like it's there's an old management maxim that I used to hear all of the time. If you're going to do something within any organization, the two things that you don't mess with are people's time and people's money. And it seems like those are the two things that Smith is going after unrelentingly. And the fact that, as you said, your husband, who has been a lifelong UCP supporter, is now going, this ain't for me anymore. This isn't what it used to be. I think that's profoundly telling for what Smith's, I don't even know what the word would be, efforts, I'll go diplomatic, have done to the air quotes conservative brand anymore. We've seen lots of people who have said that what is passing for what operates under the name of conservatism in this province is no longer conservatism.
No, he said to me the other day when I related some of this stuff that's happening, because he likes to block it out. He said, you know what? You're going to have to help me make the X under Rachel Notley because I can't do it myself.
That's pretty telling.
Like that. That's cute.
And I mean, it speaks to the importance of a good relationship right there.
Anyway, guys, I appreciate you. Thanks.
Oh, thanks so much, Lynn. Oh, like I said, always a pleasure when you weigh in. But it does, it does raise the question. Danielle Smith is somebody who is taking the UCP to places that it seems like are the third rails. They are the catastrophic things that if you start to mess with them, you give people $300 in Danny bucks that they can go spend on aromatherapy if you want. I'm not being derisive. There's some benefit to aromatherapy, but it doesn't cure cancer. But that's not going to be enough when you've done everything else so terribly. I mean, one of the questions that came up in the press conference from more than a few journalists was, okay, so what metrics are you going to use? How are you going to know whether or not blowing up the AHS board at a time of major health crisis has done anything? And Smith's response was, things will be better, which is like, I don't know what that means.
But Nate, I just want to add something. We need to understand what privatization Smith is looking at. So, Deirdre was talking about privatization in Quebec and all that. There's that. But the privatization Smith is looking into is pretty much medicine for profit. So if you have the money, you're going to get the best care. If you don't have insurance, if you don't have money, you're shit out of luck. You're going to end up in a shitty hospital with a doctor that is burned out because they're trying to help, but they can't do it anymore. The quality of care and the dollars invested by the government within the healthcare system will be cut down. She herself said earlier this year she wants to cut $5 billion in the healthcare system. How are we going to do this? It is impossible. You can't cheapen out on CAP. You can't cheapen out on banana bags. You can't cheapen out on Band-Aids. You can't cheapen out on masks, gloves, PPE. So who's going to pay for it? Oh, it's going to be bring your own Advil? Like,
if you can get it.
Need to be, if you can get it, that's one. I have a friend. Just want to say shout out to my friend bringing back some kids' meds from Minneapolis on Monday. I'm very thankful. But even there, when you go purchase, right now the solution for the kids is to go to a compounding pharmacy and purchase the compound, right? Because the compound medication diluted to, the 100 milligrams you need, but even that is more expensive.
Well, I think like you said something that I want to highlight right there because I think it's important when we're at a place in healthcare. And again, this is because this is not a limited to Alberta problem. The shortage of children's medications right now. This is because across North America there's huge unprecedented rates of respiratory infections, gastrointestinal infections, and fevers for kids. But we live in a time and place where you just said, thanks to my friend who's bringing medicine up from the States. Like, that's backwards from where we normally are.
It
Normally,
is.
Americans are coming up to Canada to get drugs. And now we're getting children's
I know, she messaged me. She was like, "How many bottles do you need? I'll just bring them." I was like, "A few, please." But it shouldn't be that complicated. And we also and it's so unconservative from Danielle Smith to do what she's doing right now, because at the end of the day, we're going to be capitalizing. We're going to be putting we're putting our futures, which is our children's life, at risk, their health at risk, the healthcare system at risk. For what? For political ideology? For personal gain? For what? What will this province look like in 40 years? Will the taxpayer base be the same? Will everybody will have jumped off the ship because it's going to be a monumental shit show? There's no long-term vision. Like, I'm looking at some of the listeners here. Some of them are relying on very special programs for their kids. That needs to be properly funded, but it's a huge advocating work to get done. And at the end of the day, that very program saves a lot of money and helps those kids. There's no rationale whatsoever. Sorry, I'm so angry. So angry, because the worst thing he can do is cutting in healthcare, especially at this time. It's very upsetting. End of rant.
I have something to make you feel better. I'm looking at our YouTube chat right now, and Robert L. says to everybody, and I think he's including Lynn in this as well, that he hopes everybody gets well soon. So thanks, thanks for that, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Deirdre, anything else to say on this? Because like it seems like everybody is taking sort of the stance of this is a terrible idea, and I haven't seen anyone outside of the Premier's office say, "Oh, this is delightful that she's gone and done this thing." I haven't been on Facebook very much, so maybe that's what I'm missing. But as I get all elitist with my social media platforms, I'm still trying to learn the elephant one. That one is, but Twitter's still here, so I have hopes that I won't have to push that learning curve too hard. But I mean, one of the things that I go back to one of the stories that we opened the show with, and when you have identified Indigenous, First Nations, Métis peoples as being key stakeholders in your economic plan, and they hold a press conference where not only they say everything you're doing is wrong, but they follow it up by laughing at your ridiculous claims that you're Cherokee. Like, at what point does a person go, I feel like perhaps I need people to take me more seriously and I need to stop doing a big thing badly?
I'm not sure if she cares, to be honest.
That's worse.
That's all I've got for you there. I don't think that she cares. She's in the top job. She's going to make the decisions, and she doesn't care if people take her seriously. She would care if she lost an election, but unless this stuff starts to become more widely known, and the thing is, like, even if her plans, no one watches press conferences. Nate, come on. Who sits down and watches
I was watching the counter, and for a Thursday afternoon, It was. I mean, normally for one of the Your Alberta live streams, 75 to 100 people. But it was. I think I saw at one point 1,300. I could be wrong. But I remember looking
And
down and being like, "Oh yeah, there's some attention going on this one."
yeah, but I would guarantee that there was a lot of interest coming from outside of the province.
Yeah,
Just throwing
probably.
that out there.
You're probably not wrong. That's not great.
Yeah, I know it's not. But if so, most people are not paying attention. Getting this health spending account, again, if you aren't paying attention and suddenly you get this letter in the mail saying, hey, you now have a $375 health spending account that you can actually, take outside of the services that AHS offers, I think you're going to find that a lot of people would be somewhat thrilled with that, right? Oh, I can go get a massage, or I can go do this. It's not going to be people who are even currently within the system, right? So people who do need more healthcare, or sorry, like do need more, they're going for, let's say, dialysis and things like that. It's not going to be them who say something is changing. And so I think that you may find that people aren't paying attention. We're going to, the legislature is going to sit as of the 30th of November
29th
or the
kicks
30th,
off for the
29th. And so you're going to have the lead up to Christmas, which again, most people are not going to be paying attention to what's going on in the premier's office during that time. People will start paying attention before the election. They may find that some things have changed. They may find that Smith hasn't managed to, get much movement on things that she has promised. And so again, if nothing has changed over much, then she may very well be elected again. This whole thing with the board, I think it was actually important too that you kind of mentioned the like the structure of it, right? That it was purely a governance board. But again, who knows that, right? You had a
That's
bunch
why I
of
wanted to
people.
say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
But
if
you
you've
had a
never
bunch
been
of
on a board
people
before,
out-
you don't know that there's these different types
different
of
kinds.
models.
Yeah. And so you have all these people that were angry about mandates, and they were angry about this and that, and they wanted the AHS board fired. So she fired the board. Like, I mean, her base is pretty happy. The people who organized to get her elected are pretty happy right now. They don't care that it isn't going to do anything. They don't care that it doesn't mean anything other than she did it.
But it could do some things. I mean, like, I'm looking at the situation and I'm kind of thinking, like, when you're in the car and it's like minus 30 and you look and you see that there's like one of your kids stuck the hand on the window or something, and there's a little bit of like schmutz there, and you go, there's some schmutz there. The logical response would be to clean up the stuff on the window. It seems like Smith's response has been, I'm going to throw a rock through the window even though it's minus 30 and we're doing a $110 on the highway in a snowstorm. Like, that's where it's a little problematic for me. But
yeah, and I don't disagree. Like I said, it's not the problem that needed to be fixed, but she's not trying to fix the problem.
Well, and you said it right there. Yeah. That's it right there. That's the ball game right there, is that this isn't about fixing the problem. This is performative politics at its very worst. Damn the consequences. What are we looking for the next week, do you think? What are you going to be looking at there, Deirdre?
Oh God.
I'll tell you what
will I be looking at?
I'll give you a sec to think about it. I'm gonna go back to Sarah, because we're coming into the home stretch here fairly quick, because we're not going past 9:30 no matter what. Sarah, you got any final words? What are you going to be looking for this week? Do we have any mandate letters that still have to come out? God help us.
I'm gonna have to go look at my spreadsheet to see if there's any more left.
I don't think there's any scary ones. Justice, health.
No, the scary ones are done. I'm just watching Minister Madhu with glee carrying the water for the premier. It's wonderful to watch.
That's what his job is.
It's, good job, Minister Mandy. But no, um, I don't think that she's gonna go super controversial. Okay, so here's, I hope she will not be going super controversial this week, because next week is the throne speech.
That's true. It's
So,
coming up. That went fast.
hopefully it's gonna be a quieter week, because November has been a year already. And hopefully we're gonna start seeing some pushback from some of the unions pretty quick here. The kids are sick, the hospitals are full, and I sound like a broken record, but it's our reality right now. And we need to come to terms with that. There's 1,000 things that needs to be fixed, but you cannot fix the other 999 problems if you do not have a healthy population. So hopefully this week she's gonna take her foot off the gas, and she's gonna be premiering. Heck, maybe she's gonna try to, sign an agreement that could not be viable with Germany. Who knows? For LNG exports, and then she's gonna come back with all those fantastic ideas, and. But it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen, because, like, what, half the schools are on outbreaks right now. They don't have enough subs to cover
Yeah.
the absences. So it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen this week. And my guess is that the new CMOH has shackles around his ankles and will be doing absolutely nothing. And a friend.
Fair enough. Deirdre, what are you looking for this next week? Anything exciting? Because there's plenty of little surprises. Even the letter. This was just thrown up in the comments of the chat here. The open letter to Albertans that was released by Tony. I'm just going to read it so phonetically, and I apologize in advance. Dagnon. That's my. I'm going to Anglophize the holy hell out of that, and you can hooked on phonics me in the comments. But he released a scathing letter where no punches were pulled, and I just retweeted it in case anybody missed it. But it's wowzers.
It was a delightful letter.
I mean. Janet French picked the line of that she thought was the most sharpest barb, is how she put it. In light of her unhinged public pronouncements, the premier represents the bleakest of role models for women who aspire to be accepted in positions of influence and leadership. I mean, it's like the reverse essay contest. It's definitely worth the read. But you think we're gonna see any other fun things like that, or what are you expecting this week, Deirdre?
I think that there will probably be more, I guess, pushback from the losing the board. Now, it also depends too on how long she takes to appoint a new one. I would guess that she fired the board probably once they already had, a pretty good idea of who they were going to replace them with. So we may see those appointments come through this coming week.
Oh no, she said she's not even looking at appointing a new board for at least 3 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, never mind then.
Oh yeah, she's in no rush whatsoever.
Not at all.
No rush whatsoever.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that an organization as large as AHS can do without a governance board for 3 months.
During a healthcare crisis.
During a healthcare crisis. So I think probably what we as far as healthcare goes, I did see last week that Red Deer ICU was full. People were being diverted to Calgary and Edmonton. As these things continue to happen, there may become more pressure, right? The absenteeism at school, that affects families, right? I can't go to work now because, my kid is sick, or because there's an outbreak in the school and my kid is possibly immunocompromised, or I am, or whatever. These are the types of things that do affect families. So I think the news will continue to flow. Obviously, we are in a very problematic situation. The whole, kids' medicine being completely unavailable, that doesn't escape people's attention. And so, it's like it's something that people will start talking more about. Smith's. I saw their Disordered YYC, and they put together the clips from her locals live stream, like with here's exactly what Danielle Smith has said in the past during her leadership run. This is what she wants to do, and here she is saying it. So I mean, this stuff it's just going to keep coming out, and I think Smith's just going to keep double down, deny.
Well, and it's interesting because one of the little side projects that I've had for the last week, and it has been unbelievably time consuming. It was one of those like, I could do this. And then I got into it and I realized like, oh my God, this is going to be my life now for like the next month. For anybody who's not familiar, Danielle Smith did a little interview with old man who yells at the clouds. She did an interview with Jordan Peterson, and fortunately I've had a little bit of help, but we've been working our way through that interview and sort of dissecting here's what Danielle Smith has said. Jordan Peterson says some other things. We're not really putting that much attention onto him because I think everybody's kind of expecting old man yells at the clouds from him. But Danielle Smith has, in that interview, the fact checking has been not a small amount of work. We're at this point we are about 38 minutes into their hour and a half long conversation. Apparently later on it just turns into Peterson pontificating for a bit, so hopefully we'll be able to cruise through that. But we're going to keep adding to that thread throughout the week because one of the things that I think happens all too often is we have politicians, whether it's Danielle Smith or whether it was Jason Kenney or, I mean, Casey Madhu's low-hanging fruit, but they say a dumb thing or they say a series of dumb things and people pick up one piece of bullshit out of the pile and go, oh, look, it's bullshit. And it's true, it absolutely is, but the problem is that it leaves all of the other stuff down on the ground. And so what we're trying to do with this thread is to really focus on the size of the pile for posterity's sake, so that people can see, if they want to, what an unchecked hour and a half conversation with Danielle Smith, where she's being fully enabled by an old man yelling at the clouds, who is completely unhinged in many ways and doesn't know facts. The Greta Thunberg bit was fantastic. Apparently she has magically frozen in time at age 13. She's 19 now. So it's, you can keep an eye out for that, and we'll be adding to that throughout the week. We're going to be changing our video platform because I've had about enough as well, and we're going to be using hopefully that video platform, and you'll be able to see, fingers crossed, we'll get Deirdre and Sarah Biggs on the video screen as well, so it's not just my ugly mug that you have to deal with for the entirety of the show. So hopefully that'll be Wednesday if I can do a whole bunch of learning.
I'm gonna have to wash my hair.
I mean, what ball cap, yo? Why do you think
I can't do
this?
next week in my house coat.
This is entirely why I wear a ball cap. I mean,
I got my my nightgown, Little House in the Prairie style. Deirdre knows what I'm talking about. It's very comfortable.
If you go with like a green ensemble, then you could just green screen the whole thing and be like a floating head. We could have some fun with that. There's Halloween show next year. But yeah, hopefully that's up and running for Wednesday. Other than that, I don't know. Anything else you women want to add? I catch myself now. I
I think, I think we've got. I think health care is probably going to be our biggest issue over flu season, RSV season, COVID stuff. Like this is just going to be where we are and part of the conversation for a while yet. And yeah, I guess I just hope that people are taking care. And one of the things that I know I'm sure that we've brought this up before, but if you go back to well, if it's still working, but CMOH Alberta, one of the things that I noticed back in the day is that Dr. Hinshaw's press conferences would sound very much like, yep, we're moving on. But if you go to her Twitter, she would put something up after the press conference, and it always included things like, or things that didn't come up in the press conference, things like, you should continue to mask in public, things like that. So I think, yeah, I guess just everybody take care and continue to follow good doctor's orders.
There you go. Sarah, anything to wrap it up?
Don't follow Theo Fleury or Jamie Sally for health advice, please. And please mask up. Like, I know there's the Spruce Meadows Christmas market and all of those exciting things. Please, please, please mask up. There's new variants coming out of China right now, especially Beijing. Today announced that they were pretty much like telling everybody to stay home, because I think it's the BR7, if I'm not, or BQ7, I forgot what it was, but stay safe. Get your boosters. Like, I really wish I could get, like, my flu shot, but my kids are sick every 2 weeks, so I can't not get well enough to go and get my vaccination done. But get your flu shot, get your vaccine booster, and just, be careful. It's not over.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things, even if you're not somebody who subscribes to, get vaccinated, get your flu shot. The efficacy for this year's flu shot, from what I've read so far, and I'm not a doctor, is quite good. So it's worth doing. But at the end of the day, the reality is the healthcare system is collapsing. So anything that you can do to keep yourself out of the healthcare system is probably a good idea. Yeah, so I'll clear the room at this point. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, we would love nothing more than if you signed up to be one of our Patreon supporters at www.patreon.com/TheBreakdownAB, where for the price of a fancy muffin, that if you bought the muffin, it might break in half, which would be an absolute tragedy. You don't have to deal with that if you sign up to be a Breakdown Patreon.
Don't be like Maddie.
Don't be like Maddie. Sign up to the Breakdowns Patreon instead. You get early access to our interview episodes, and we're going to start those up again, hopefully in the not too distant future. And you also get the warm, fuzzy feeling that comes from knowing that you're helping us to switch video platforms, because I'm done with this train wreck. Literally wore the right shirt today. And other than that, stay safe. As both Sarah and Deirdre have noted, there's a lot of stuff going out there. The things that you can do to keep yourself safe. And as I said, you don't want to be going into the healthcare system if you don't want to. One of the other things that I just want to take a sec to hit on before I close things out entirely, Deirdre did an excellent point of mentioning that there's a lot of people who just don't engage with the political landscape these days. And one of the things that we need to do in order to move the needle is be willing to have kind conversations with people where maybe we do a little bit of informing. It can be a little bit uncomfortable, and you'll probably hear some things that you don't necessarily want to hear, but the more that people are engaged, the more that they're even thinking about it, the more that they're going to be aware of the shit show that's going on. So it's really important to give yourself a goal of having one political conversation with somebody that maybe you wouldn't normally a week, because you might be able to influence them being more engaged, and who knows, you might learn something. I've certainly learned things from people that I fundamentally disagree with on 99% of stuff. Other than that, stay safe, keep the conversation going.
Bye.